Shalom, Yasha'Allah, Islam to the Moors, peace and love to the black family, 165135 to the nation of gods and herbs, and Hotep to the Egyptologists. Once again, you're not under the sound of the voice of your brother, Kahan Tazadaq, your Ak. Black laws for all black people, to those of you that don't agree or disagree, hey, that is your choice. But I'm going to say, I have love for all of you, even those of you that may not know who you are. So in this video, as usual, I would like to say that, I'm going to give you the absolute truth about America, freedom, and so-called sovereignty. But basically what I want to touch on is how this nation was actually constructed off of the Bible, which many of you have a tendency to denounce. So, as usual, I'm going to start off by stating that, for the record, this is not legal advice. I do not offer legal advice. If you need legal advice, seek yourself a competent counsel, and then please be advised. What I'm about to give you is strictly for educational, informational, and again, to those of you that find this as entertainment purposes only. Now, many of you so-called whites may be offended by this video. Now, I like to always quote John 8:32, and you shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free. Because you haven't been given the truth. Because you haven't been given the right knowledge. You have been given his story, which is essentially, should I say, what they now label as history, which is not necessarily the truth. And in most cases, it's the lies. And it's very difficult for many of you to embrace right knowledge because your minds has actually been overwhelmed and overflooded with lies. So one of the lies that many so-called whites promote is that America started with the pilgrims from Europe, and it was actually constructed off of that. Now, this is a lie and is deception. Long before any white man ever set his feet on the shores of America, my people were here. Our people were here. So, the truth is that we indigenous people were here when Edomites arrived to America. Now, most so-called whites would have died off, if our forefathers that you now refer to as Indians or Native Americans would not have actually showed you how to till the ground and plant and grow crops. That's the truth. That's the absolute truth. And if you doubt it, you're going to find out that it is the truth. Because if you go and research your books, you're not going to find this truth. Because our history and our truths are not in your books written after the Renaissance. So you then came out with a holiday called Thanksgiving which actually only occurred once. And then the very next year, the very people that you refer to as Indians or Native Americans, you slaughtered. You slaughtered my people. You slaughtered our people. And then a man by the name of Amherst proceeded to do trading with them and putting smallpox in the blankets, killing off thousands of indigenous people that you refer to as Indians. That and other such principles is what you have actually constructed your nation on. Now, the truth has to be told. And don't say this is racism. Don't try to pull the race card with me. This is the absolute truth. And the truth will make you mad, then make you free. So, you brought smallpox here. And Amherst deliberately used it to destroy the indigenous people. But you keep this out of history. So you sit down. Let me make this very clear to the folks. They sit down with people. They sit down with the indigenous people that they refer to as Native Americans the first year, and they called it Thanksgiving because they was thanking us for teaching them how to survive off the land and so on and so forth and grow their crops, because half of them had died off. Half of them had died off. Half of the so-called pilgrims had died off. Then after we taught you to do this, you murdered us. So this is the first known history of any illegal aliens coming to a Mexican, which you now refer to as America, with so-called white people. But now, you are telling people that are actually indigenous to the land to get a green card. Now, I got a problem with that. And any rational thinking person would actually have a problem with that. And I'm talking in common parlance, not law. So, this is the first known history of illegal aliens that took over our country and made us slaves and illegal aliens. Now you refer to Mexicans, the tribe of Asaka or Shashaka, as illegal aliens. So today, Tazadaq Shah Bey will teach you why Edomites can't be sovereigns in a land, in our land, and why you so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans of Negroid descent that were born here are born sovereigns. Yet you contract your rights away because you do not understand law. So one of the first things I would like to point out, even under Esau systems, one of the first principles that they was taught was to read the Bible and to study the law. Now, after this video, you will understand why men like this guy Santos, I can't remember his last name. He pretty much speaks against the Creator. He hates and he detests God, from what I've actually ascertained for the little bit of footage that I've actually watched in this video. And this is why many of the Edomites speak out against the Creator and they stay away from God. Now, first of all, if an Edomite wants to be sovereign, you have to first go home, because you cannot be sovereign in a foreign land. Now, many of you are saying, well, I was born here. Well, yeah, but you're not native here. You took this land by bloodshed and murder. This is how you got here. Now, in the history of Europe, you did not. Now, I want to make this very clear, and this is actually going to offend a lot of Edomites, but I got to tell the truth. Now, first of all, I want to say the so-called white people are not the true Europeans. But I'm not gonna go into the history of that in this video. I've done that in other videos. The original Europeans was pushed out of their land, and now they're in places like Hawaii and the Samoans and so on and so forth. Now, the people that moved there, the Edomites, assume their names, and now everybody think that they're Europeans. But that is another lecture. So if you want to be sovereign, you got to go home. You got to go back into the caves and hillsides of Europe and Georgia, Russia, by the Black and Caspian Sea, because your history is the Caucasus Mountains, which is where the word Caucasian derives from. The word Caucasian does not mean white. It means cave dweller. And prior to that, you was in Mount Seir. Edom dwelt in Mount Seir. Go and get a Bible dictionary and define Mount Seir and define Edom, and you will see that Edom dwelt in Mount Seir. And this explains why you have this passion for skyscrapers, for skiing, skiing down mountains and so on and so forth. Like being up high, because that is your history. And this is not said to denounce anyone. It is said because I've actually researched the truth. I found historical artifacts and proof that this is why Edomites are the way that they are. That is your original inhabitant. This is why you build these skyscrapers, 62 floors and so on and so forth. But you can't be sovereign in our land, despite what you're teaching here. You can't be sovereign if you pay rent. Now I want to say, now I'm talking to everyone. Now I'm not just talking to Esau, but I want to say this to a lot of you Edomites. The reason that your so-called pilgrims came here is because they couldn't be sovereigns in Europe. You was not allowed to be a sovereign in Europe. You could only be a sovereign if you was actually in royalty, or if you was a king or a queen. Therefore, you can never be sovereign. And you can't be sovereign in a foreign land. You can't be sovereign if you pay rent. Let me put that out there for all of you, Esau and the Jakes. And when I say Jake, I mean the descendants of Jacob. So, if you examine the history of the people that now refer to themselves as European throughout your history in Europe, you are not sovereigns. You had to actually get your land from royalty or the queen or the king in Europe, in England. Edomites came here and they killed off millions of our people and have established yourselves as sovereigns. If you want to be sovereign, you must go back to the Caucasus Mountains in Mount Seir, because that is rightfully your land. We, the indigenous people, are the only sovereigns in this land. Now, if I hurt anyone's feelings, I do not apologize, but I'm just telling the truth. And I don't know anything more appropriate than telling the truth. So let's go. Let's look at some of this history of what they refer to as America. We're not going to look at the history of the indigenous people, but I'm going to look at the history of the people that now refer to themselves as European. And I'm going to show you how hypocritical your own people are, how some now has actually trying to form a democracy, because many of our people has actually awakened and they want to return to the law, statutes, and commandments of the Creator, and you're moving as far away from the Bible that you possibly can. Why? Because this system that you set up was based upon our Bible. The Constitution, 34% of it, 34% of the quotes in the Constitution derive from what? Biblical passages. The Declaration of Independence derived from biblical passages. And if you trace the history back from that, like I did, if you go back and back, it goes back to covenants. Covenants from who? Covenants from Yah. So the so-called pilgrims went to Amsterdam in Holland and did not like the hard work, and they decided to leave Amsterdam in Holland. Now, I don't like to deal with Esau's calendars, but I'm talking about around 1608. For some of you that's going to say, oh, Tazadaq, give a time and date. But I don't like to deal with Esau's calendars. But for those of you that want a time and date, around 1608. Now, you did not like England because you did not want to follow the customs of King James, who was a so-called black man. Now, you can like that, understand, and believe it or not. I'm not here to say what you like, but he was a so-called black man. And he was actually enforcing the laws of the Bible, and not necessarily in the manner that you desired. So many of you decided that, hey, we're going to leave England. And so you decided it is best that we leave. You wanted to teach your form of Christianity the way that you wanted it. Now, you had 70 London businessmen, and don't believe me, go and check it out for yourself after I give you this information, that actually financed the so-called pilgrims to go to what is called the New World on a boat called the Speedwell and the Mayflower. Now, because the Speedwell could not withstand the waters and the winds, they end up all cramming up on the Mayflower. 102 men, women, and children, landing in a place called Cape Cod. Now, in 1620, you set up a government in my people's land, claiming the land as your own. And this was known as these so-called laws that you put in place was known as the Mayflower Compact. Now, this is before the Constitution of 1787. Now, the businessmen helped them because they hoped that the pilgrims would actually bring them profit from the New World. Now, the place that the pilgrims named Plymouth was the land of what you call many Indians, that you refer to as Indians, the indigenous people, many of Negroid descent. You caused them to die off with your diseases that you bought from Europe. Now, Plymouth became their new home. They had no food because you didn't know how to grow crops. And if you doubt it, go and check out the research. And you were starving off. Your people was dying off. Now, half of you died off the first winter. And so, now, the way that the history goes, the so-called whites had actually captured an indigenous Native American by the name of Squanto. Now, Squanto was actually taken to Europe, to England, should I say, as a slave. And he came back speaking English, and he taught you, your people, the pilgrims, to survive. He taught you to feed yourselves. He taught you not to starve to death. So during the fall, after he taught you this, you got with my people that you refer to as Native Americans, and they taught you to feed yourself. And you had a celebration for this, and you referred to it as Thanksgiving. Because you said you was thanks for the knowledge and love and respect and the brotherhood that we gave you. And we tried to teach you. Yet, what did you give us? As thanks, you gave us smallpox. You gave us murder, and you gave us death. And now, you put in movies and on televisions that we were savages. Yet we taught you to survive in our land. Then you started to build your churches, and you started to brainwash the Native Americans and Mexicans that you refer to as America. Now, I would like to point out that when the so-called American colonies was actually created, the best-selling books was the Bible, and the second best-selling books was books about law. That's a fact. Don't believe me? Go and check it out for yourselves. Now, the King of England had actually stated that they would actually lose the American colonies because the best-selling books were the Bible and books on laws. So he stated that these people know their rights and they know the Creator, so we're going to lose the colonies. So all of you that do not know law in this day and age, and you do not know the Bible, then you deserve to be slaves. Because as I've stated over and again in many videos, that is what this system was constructed upon. But you rather play your Xbox 360 than study the law, than study the Bible. See, you cannot mentally enslave someone that knows the Bible and knows law Because that's what this system was built on. See, 34% of the quotes in the Constitution are taken from the Bible. Fact, fact, fact. Now, today, you so-called blacks know nothing about law. You know nothing about the Bible or government. So the so-called founding fathers mostly use quotes from the book of Deuteronomy for their Constitution because it has much of the laws of the Creator in it. And again, about 34% of the quotes that they use to make the Constitution is made up of Bible quotes. Yet you have people today that are telling me, Tazadaq, stay out of that Bible. Yet this system of law was taken from the Bible and twisted. Yet you're saying you want to be a secured party creditor, but you're telling me to stay out of the Bible when this system of law is built on the Bible. Now, if this nation that Adawam, Esau, has set up is based on laws of the Creator, how is it that in 2016, homosexuality, lesbianism, and transgenders have rights? Because according to Leviticus 20 and 13, it tells you the punishment for these acts. Now, how are you going to read the Bible and pretend that Leviticus 20 and 13 do not exist? Because you're of your father is the devil, and the work of your father you shall do. Now, a century and a half after the pilgrims established this so-called nation that they established, a century and a half later, the so-called founding fathers set up their constitution, which they claim was part of the Mayflower Compact that the pilgrims established. But much of the Constitution is from the Bible. It is from the Bible. So in 1787, the Constitution was actually framed and the government had limited powers. Now I'm going to show you how they got off because, let me say that again. Let me reiterate that. In 1787, when the Constitution was framed, the government had limited powers. Do you understand? Do you understand? Man had and have certain unalienable rights that cannot be taken away. Those are the rights that a man had, but you can contract your rights away. So today, this de facto that you refer to as government has attempted to deprive the people of their rights. But I, man, they say, need a permit to have a gun. See, gun laws are color of law. It is public policy. And it only has power because you consent. Again, remember that some 34% of the quotes the so-called founding fathers used was from our Bible. You cannot talk Yah or Yahweh or Yahweh in school or at work anymore, or you're deemed a fool if you believe in the Creator. Talk back to me. Now, just about all of the authors of the Constitution and Declaration of Independence were professing so-called Christians. So explain gay rights to me. In today's political system, they've actually granted rights to gays, which the Bible condemns. Now, I'm baffled that the very system that was actually created on biblical principles embraces the rights of homosexuals and lesbians and transgenders. People, your Constitution, which actually reserves your rights, not gives you rights, is actually being deprived by the very people that you've actually set up in government. By the very people that you set up in government, they've depriving you of your Constitution. So, The Constitution is just a piece of paper. It doesn't give you any rights. Your rights are inherited from the Creator. The Creator granted you your rights. So the standard school textbook used to be what? Tazadaq? It used to be the Bible. That was the standard school textbook. Now, you can't talk God in school. You can't talk Yahweh in school. You can't talk Yahweh in school. And one was actually taught grammar and spelling based on the Bible. What happened? Now, did you know that in 1811, if someone actually used profanity in conjunction with the name Jesus Christ, the government court stated it was actually an indirect attack on the country, and that man was fined $500 in jail. That's 1811. Do you know how much money $500 was in 1811? But if you spoke out, now we know that Jesus Christ is not the proper, appellation of Yeshua or Yahweh Shah. But my point is, if you spoke out against that name, you were fined $500 and thrown in jail. In 1844, Vandal versus Garrard, it was ruled that schools were to teach from the Bible because it was the moral authority of the country. In 1864, the motto, "In God We Trust," first appeared on U.S. currency. How many of you knew that? Now go ahead and fix your lips and lie. In 1892, the Supreme Court ruled that this is a Christian nation. Wait. So if in 1862, the Supreme Court ruled that this is a Christian nation, meaning that you are a follower of Yeshua, Yahweh Shah, or as you say, Jesus Christ, then how in the hell is this nation that declared to be a Christian nation passing statutes and color of laws for gay rights, gay marriages, transgenders in the bathroom of their choice, men in the bathroom with little 5-year-old girls, and so on and so forth, because you're wicked as hell. Now, many of you know that the Bible is the word of God. Woodrow Wilson said it. He said, when you read the Bible, you will know that it is the word of God. Now, this was an Edomite. But today, many of you're against this Bible. Calvin Coolidge said, in this book, talking about the Bible, will be found the solution of all the problems of the world. Now you can see why they was more successful in the beginning, because they was basing their laws on this Bible, our book, given to Yasha Allah, the children of God. In 1962, the Supreme Court declared classroom prayer unconstitutional. You see, they began to change it. A year later, they removed the Bible from the classroom. See, this is Satan at work. They departed from that system that the so-called founding fathers claim to have established. So, like it or not, this government was established on "Thus saith the Lord." You can like it or not. A constitutional republic. You said it. To the republic for which it stands. What do you have now? Democracy, mob rule, where if 51% of the people decide that, hey, well, we want gays to have rights, we want it to be a law for gays to be married, then so it is. That's a democracy. But that's not what this nation was built on. See, you have two basic forms of government, either evolution or you have creation. Creation, the laws come from the Creator, Yahweh, Yahweh. Rights are unalienable, means you can't place a lien against them. Government should actually be limited to punish meant of only evildoers and defense that is a constitutional republic. See, that is under a creation form of government. So with evolution, laws come from man's opinions. Man's opinions. Rights are granted by government. Government be the all-powerful provider. Your EBT cards. Your food stamps. Your Medicaid, and so on and so forth. This is known as democracy. It becomes totalitarianism. So, with the second form, the rights to drive come from government. But when they come from the Creator, you have unalienable rights, folks. This government has degenerated to democracy. Ownership of property is very important. Let me put that out before I close this video. If you do not own property, then you are essentially a slave, because you are property owned by a corporation. If you own property, you are not a slave. But if you pay rent, you are a slave, like it or not. They made us slaves, folks. They made us slaves. Yes, you're de facto that you voted in the office. Now, you have a wicked Kabbalah that has come forth claiming that there must be a separation of church and state. And this brainwashing process has been accepted as fact. But let's go back to George Washington. Georgie, Patrick Henry, and Thomas Jefferson. Now, Georgie, I don't know if any of you knew, he actually went to a church that's still standing in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And Georgie declared himself as a Christian, as did Patrick Henry and Thomas Jefferson. Now, these men that you proclaim as founding fathers believe in God and the Bible, and stated any nation without a belief in the Bible, would not stand. So, your Declaration of Independence and Constitution was based upon biblical quotes. Now you have these modernized deists that have you going against the very foundation that your so-called founding fathers constructed their nation on. So, see, the first British settlement that was actually established in Jamestown, Virginia in 1607, they claim to have built their foundation on God and the Bible. Don't believe me? Go and check it out for yourselves. Your pilgrims, the pilgrims, got their name from our book, the Bible. 1 Peter 2:11, which reads, "Dearly beloved, I beseech you as strangers and pilgrims." That's where they got the name from. Abstain from fleshly lusts, which war against the soul. See, the pilgrims thought England was so far off from God that they left England. Why am I teaching you this? Because now this nation is promoting transgenders in the bathrooms of their choice, promoting homosexuality, promoting lesbianism, and so on and so forth. Yet you claim to be a Christian nation. That is hypocritical. Talking about all men have their rights and their own opinions to be what they want to be. Well, that's what a democracy is. That's a democracy. And this is why the world is so damn chaotic today. That is what a democracy is. It is wicked and deceptive and has no morals. Why does this current government promote these practices and put statues and rights in place that the Creator condemns? That's the question. Now, next, many of you so-called white modern historians claims that the Constitution is a secular document that does not mention God. Well, let me talk to you briefly about this and bring this video to a close. Newsweek magazine on December the 27th, 1982 stated, and I quote, "The Bible, perhaps more than the Constitution, is our founding document," end of quote. Now, if you trace the Constitution back as far as you could trace it, as I have done, you will discover it goes back to covenants. If you read the Bible, you will discover that Yahweh or Yahweh always dealt with man through covenant. Case in point, the book of Deuteronomy, the 17th chapter, verse 2. And it reads, "If there be founding among you within any of thy gates which the Lord thy power giveth thee, man or woman, that have walked wickedness in the sight of the Lord thy God in transgression of his covenant." So the Heavenly Father always dealt with covenants, from which the Constitution was constructed and which the Declaration of Independence was constructed prior to the Constitution. So in the traditional Constitution, you do not find a separation of church and state. That's another lie that was promoted. And this whole thing about the separation of church and state comes from a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to a Baptist church. And from that concept, they build the concept of separation of church and state in the American political thought. The courts now look to this letter that Jefferson wrote to a Baptist church in their jurisprudence. Yet Jefferson himself stated, no government can flourish without religion. So, folks, the de facto is using the court system to separate you from your Creator and from the Bible. That's the bottom line. And if you continue to allow it, you're finished. If you can't clearly see that you're actually being deprived of your rights, you are finished. You're finished. Done. And with that, I'm going to bring this one to a close. You've actually been in the sounds of the voice of your brother, Tazadaq, Shah, and a grieved man. So I thank you for listening, and I suggest that you watch this video at least 10 times to get it embedded into your mind, because you need to know this history, and repetition is the father of learning. So brothers and sisters, you cannot throw away the Bible if you want to understand law. The reason that I understand this system of law so much is because I understand the Bible. This system of law is built on the Bible. You cannot master law if you do not know the Bible. Point blank, period. Point blank, period. So, return to the law, statutes, and commandments of the Creator. Many of you are going to find out that there is a Creator. Many of you are going to find out that you cannot live by man's concepts alone. Many of you are going to find out is you decide to follow this Bible, your lives will change and you will get the things that you desire if you believe. And many of you are going to find out that if you don't, you're going to get hell. So once again, I'm going to say, Shalom, Yasha Allah, Kwam Yasha Allah. And I'm going to sign out and say, hey, if you like the video, like the video. And share it with your friends and family. Tazadaq is out. Shalom.